Hello and welcome to Curveball. Oh my gosh, today is such a treat. I am here with this amazingly beautiful woman, Shawn Mahshie. Okay, so here is a little bit of background on Shawn. What do you do when life doesn't just throw you one curveball, but it's like you're in a batting cage with a whole bunch of them, one after the other, rapid fire with no time to duck? If you're Shawn Mahshie, you take those curveballs and turn them into a philosophy, a movement, a way of life. Shawn is a transformational energy medicine practitioner. That sounds fancy. A writer, retreat leader, and the creator of the Symmetry Principle. I'm just so excited to share this with you because this is an absolutely life-changing method that flips the script on struggle and turns your big pains, your big problems, your big struggles into the greatest tools for peace, purpose, and actual healing. You might be thinking, wait, using my pain for a path to healing? Yes, totally. She has helped thousands find their way back to themselves, especially when everything around them is falling apart. She has been through it all: heart collapse, career derailment, marriage breakdown, dreams deferred, and still came out the other side with more energy. Somehow she sleeps like a baby, more clarity, and a house so beautiful, really an Airbnb, so beautiful that people want to get married there. Literal weddings on her property. Shawn, I am so glad you're here.
Thanks, Heather. I'm so glad to be here and to see you. I know all of this has meant a lot to you too. You grabbed it right away when you heard it and went, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Talk about using my problems to create a path to peace. When your brain breaks, that's a big problem. That's a good impetus to start thinking differently. So let's start with the moment that things began to unravel for you and how you learned to rebuild not just your life, but like a whole new way of being. You've described a period where everything seemed like everything was like collapsing: your health, your career, your marriage. And I think you had just adopted a child too, like your daughter was very young, right? So you just have all these things. Can you take us into that moment in your life? What was that first thread that began to unravel? And then how did you make sense of it all at the time?
Thanks. It's, of course, hard to know exactly when it all starts to unravel, but I believe it goes way back to childhood, a pattern of always turning against myself. I think we learned early, possibly even there's a dinner table moment that I remember in childhood where I just had the moment of, I can't confront what's really going on here with my mom's anger or with other things that are happening, so I need to turn it on myself.
Right.
And over years of turning it on myself, working hard to please others, draining my adrenaline with that, it eventually started to break down. At this point in my marriage, I had published a book that was translated into languages, speaking all over the world.
Amazing.
Daughter from China and the stressful marriage. And it was actually a resurgence of a much earlier health problem I had that came back around. What I wanted to say though is that wasn't the moment of the curveball where I figured it out. It was much later,
but
after a lot of
you do get to a breaking point. So one of the things that I think is really interesting, because I've chatted with a few people who have had like health things or like big burnout things. And one of the things we all realize is that like our body, like we get a lot of clues before we finally take action too. So I can see that. So it's almost like this invisible, I call that kind of like coping skill, like a dog whistle coping skill, because it's so ingrained in who we are from our childhood that sometimes, like, I just know many times I sometimes have to stop and literally think, wait, is this me or is this my coping skill? Because that's like how ingrained it is in me. And it's so alive. I always say, just because a dog whistle isn't making a noise doesn't mean, just because we can't hear it, doesn't mean it's not making a noise. And
so much of what we are working with is that those coping skills don't necessarily serve us. And we start to be able to find out the ways they do and the ways they don't.
So there is a point though, where, you're looking around you, you're just like, hold on a second. Marriage, not so much. Career, wait. I wrote this book. It's supposed to be my big thing. And everything feels like it's crumbling around me. At what point did you make that pivot to say, okay, hold on a second. I know this is so chicken soup for the soul, but it truly is like that you realize like this isn't happening to you. It's happening for you. Like you were going to do something with this, because I'm so interested in how you made the leap from that into figuring out, hold on, I'm going to use these crazy situations that each one on their own would be a lot to manage. And they're all coming at once, but I'm going to use this power for good instead of bad, right?
And it is a completely new way of life when you know that whatever triggers, hurts, or scares you is holding your path out of it. So you're either loving life or using what hurts to wake yourself up. So there was a moment right toward the end of my marriage when I thought maybe we had been separated. I thought maybe it was going to work out. We were having this beautiful anniversary at a bed and breakfast and had actually just made love. And something that he said, I don't even know what it was, just hit me. Just, nope. It's not him, it's me. I'm the one who's abandoned myself. So that really, I got up and went into that clawfoot bathtub, turned the water on hard, and cried about the hardest I had in my whole life. Not for the loss of the marriage, but just seeing the ways I had been abandoning and turning on myself and putting my well-being in everyone else's hands. And when I came down the stairs to go out to dinner that night, after being so broken and sick and giving up my big career and everything, he looked at me and said, whoa, what happened to you? Because I was just glowing. And we split up for good three weeks later. And this state is what I call self-solidarity. And I didn't really know how to get there until almost 10 years later. That's the other moment you're asking about. But I had a glimpse of it where I knew I was the hero I had been waiting for, that I couldn't keep putting my well-being in the hands of others, particularly a one-on-one codependent type relationship. And
that is absolutely the most beautiful story. Like, it just must have been, some people call those cries ugly cries. And I'm like, those cries are never ugly. They are so cathartic and so beautiful and just so intense. It's almost like your body is in labor in a way. Like, I think about when I was in labor with my daughter, when you're really in that state, it's like your body's like really taking over and releasing all that energy.
What's interesting about that smile when I came down the steps, it was the very next week that my daughter learned she could pull herself to standing in her crib. And I was there for the first time where I framed the pictures because it was like, for the first time I was got, okay, it's not them. It's me. After a lifetime of codependence, I saw it. But I still didn't know how to systematically get there, which is what I teach now.
Yeah, you call that the Symmetry Principle, right? And I just think it's the coolest thing. And I know that you've done some like mini coaching sessions with me that have been so powerful, because sometimes like I really pay attention to how people talk about themselves when they're going to change. And we use really aggressive language with ourselves. Like, one of my mentors was like, oh yeah, and if I don't do this, you can call me and jump down my throat and tell me. And I'm like, why would anyone do that? Or you can just say, kick me in the ass and just tell me what to do. Or we're very like aggressive with ourselves. So I love how tender this practice is, but that it just seems like the greatest irony, because pain and peace are like opposites, right? But they're part of the same equation. So this principle, tell me how this came to life for you, because you said you spent 10 years like really trying to perfect it, or I guess develop it to a way that you could teach it. And then what does it look like when someone begins to live by it?
First of all, what you're talking about, that black and white, we're able to close the polarities on that. So this is based on the idea that whenever you're suffering emotionally or otherwise, it boils down to what you're believing. And yet this is not just about positivity and affirming over it. It's like, you're over here believing this is the way it is. I need them too. And then not only do you witness what that does to you, but to believe that thought. And this part is based on the work of Byron Katie. So even though for those 10 years, I did every kind of internal, external, Western, Eastern, Ayurvedic, yoga, 12-step programs, all of it. And when I saw that one thing, that it's the thinking and affirming over the thinking, meditating, none of it worked for me. Mindfulness, wonderful, but those thoughts didn't want me to just observe them. They want me to help them out, because these represent childhood wounds that believe they're saving us. That's why it's so tenacious. People will say, oh, just let it go. Just don't worry about it. No, that little part, it thinks it's saving you. So it'd be like if you had a child who was really scared and you push them away and so don't worry about it, they're going to hug your leg and scream louder. And that is
Right.
chronic illness, relationship failure,
Yes.
all of it. So we bring the thoughts up and get them on paper. And
Right.
so many spiritual traditions will say, don't judge. No, you've got to stop judging and having expectations. But no, they're really there. So we get
Right.
them on paper where you can then question them one at a time. Oh my goodness, when that was happening, I was believing this. And what's the
Right.
cost to you of believing that? How do you react? Then you turn it so that this part is based on the work of Byron Katie. Living-in-Symmetry uses both the work of Byron Katie and my wheel of
Right.
self-forgiveness. So anyway, you're over here believing that polarity and you find, oh, that thought is as true or truer in that thought. And your mind just says, okay, I don't know what's going on here, which is more
Right.
true. And you come back to
Yes.
the middle. Just
Right.
curiosity might be the highest form of love is, oh, what's really happening here? What's
I
going to
love
happen next?
you
I
use my
always say
favorite word. Yeah.
free fall into life and let love catch you. It always will. You just don't get to
Yes.
decide what love looks like. Love can
Right.
look like a brain tumor.
Brain aneurysm.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So
That is so interesting. Like this idea of using like the discomfort, like fear or sadness and conflict. And I did trauma work 2 summers ago for the first time. And I just had never really done anything like that. And it was so interesting because I realize now, like when I'm triggered, like who it is, it's like little 6-year-old Heather and I know that if a child came up to me and said, I'm hurting, I need your help, I would not say, look, you can just jump down my throat. I'm just going to jump down your throat. And I would never treat a child that way. So I've learned to be very tender with myself and then be curious. Like, why am I feeling this way? And one of the beautiful things I think about this is once you can see a limiting belief like this or a belief system, don't you feel like then you're able to release it because you see how it has helped you? Like it was designed to help you. Like I just know when my limiting beliefs start showing themselves, I can say, okay, look, I know you're showing yourself because you're getting ready to like, I think I'm like we're not going to be working together anymore, but I know I created you and I know you helped me for probably many years, but I'm a different person now. So I'm not going to kick you out, but I know like our time is coming to an end. And so I'm very tender even with that limiting belief too. And so then so tell me a time like when you,
I want to come back,
oh yeah,
sorry, to what you
yes,
were just saying,
yeah.
because this is about those times when you can't be tender with yourself, when no matter how far you've come,
Tell me more
one of
about,
my 6 keys are the first of the Living in Symmetry model. The first part is become the curious, compassionate caretaker of the littlest
yes.
parts of you. Second is you move into observe the operation and open to the opposite. And there's the whole series you go through. And at the end, though, is enjoy your evolution and embrace its edge. You've moved into this bigger container, a higher level of energy, love functioning.
Right.
Yet the edge of that, you'll keep running into the edge of your evolution.
Yes.
And you go, oh, bummer, I'm back there again. No, it's the other way around. You go, I'm going to embrace that edge. You go, I've got a live one here.
I love that. Yeah.
As much as I've tried to be tender with myself, some of that's just a party line and it's not real for me yet.
Oh, right. Okay.
This is so much about whether it's about judging others or feeling like you're a victim of their choices and behaviors, or judging yourself, that we take what hurts, what triggers you now. So all the big theoretical things and the following a program doesn't work as well as saying, in that moment when he said that, I felt, and then we work from that moment, no matter how tiny or petty it might be. It's amazing. It can show you your whole life. And then when we say things like, then you're able to let go of the thought. It's like, in some ways, we're not ever in charge of the thinking. It's one of the ways we can find our own innocence is that we didn't create the thought that is sending us down the path that's working. so we can say, wow, what was I thinking and believing in that moment?
Right.
I didn't create the belief. It
No,
was
like I was taught to believe that because your
right.
brain does not have critical thinking skills until you're like a preteen, right? So your little brain is like an unmanned hockey goal for the first 12 to 13 years of your life. So no wonder like people have issues with their parents and siblings. I'm like, oh my God, I totally understand that now because it's so wired into how you became you. So
Right. And even when you get past the actual triggering with that person, that mother, that sibling, everything in your life will keep bringing you the mirror you need. And people used to say
right.
that. They're like, oh, yeah, they're just a mirror for you.
Tell me
Or
what that means
it
because
never
like
worked for me. I was like,
no,
or people would,
I get very frustrated when people say that because I just think that there are all these like false positives out in the world. Oh, the thing you hate most in other people is the thing you hate most in yourself. And I'm like, oh, way to make me think about the things I hate and then the things I hate about other people. But you would say, no, work with that.
yeah.
Go with that. Find out why you would say that. Oh my
Me
gosh.
too. And I
Yeah.
used to say, people would say, oh, yeah, the hard stuff just makes you stronger, or they're just a mirror. And I was like,
Yeah.
no, the hard stuff just made me realize how bad things could get and how
Yeah.
anxious or depressed but no, what
Right.
happens is that there really are blind spots,
Right.
which would be called psychological discounts in the psychological field, and that
Mhm.
we honestly cannot see them. And it's not that life is bringing it to us. It feels like that. It's that we're looking through a lens that is going to see it in a way that it'll
Oh,
appear to be, you're doing
right.
this to me. And so what I love about these turnarounds that come out of the work of Byron Katie is that we find how we're doing to ourselves and others what we thought was
Right.
being done to us. And I always was good at looking at my own part, but I would beat myself up. And this
Right.
is not that. We're just taking a look. We're going, oh, wow. If they're doing that to me, if I want them to stop yelling at me, for example, I
Right.
need her to stop yelling at me. Then when you turn it around, I need me to stop yelling at
Look at
myself.
me.
You
Right.
find the ways
Yes.
that you're much harder on yourself, or that they've triggered something in their yelling
Yes.
that is an area where you already hate yourself. Otherwise, they
Right.
wouldn't be able to
Yes.
push your buttons. And then
Well,
I need me to stop yelling at them. Where are you actually keeping the argument going? Or even if you're not saying it,
right.
people will find, oh, I'm much harder in my head and more judgmental of that person than they are of
Right.
me right now. And so your path out of it always, it's not like self-blame. It's like, rah, we found that
Right.
if it's
Yes.
an inside job, then I get to clean it up from over here. I don't have to
Yes.
wait for them to change.
I love this because I just love this so much. I love the fact you just said, I mean, I could create 1,000 bumper stickers and have $1 million business selling all the things you just said, because it's absolutely just hitting me like so resonant with me. Like I literally have goosebumps right now, Shawn, because I work with so many entrepreneurs. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is so many entrepreneurs, I guess, just come from a different ilk, right? A lot of them come, I guess every single human being has some sort of childhood trauma. I used to know like other people have trauma, like my trauma doesn't count, but everyone has it. But there are some people who have it like entrepreneurial, and it makes you push up right against a lot of those limiting beliefs. Like I remember for a long time, I was afraid like one of my sisters would come out publicly slander me, which never happened, but I was afraid of that. And it kept me on the sidelines for a really long time. And
And that is
so,
exactly the kind of belief you would put that on
yes,
paper. And yeah.
yes. And what was so interesting is I remember once you really helped me. I was working with this coach who was like we just had this like I felt like I was not being seen. And I remember you told me, you were just like, I said, you were like, what do you feel like? I'm like, I feel like she doesn't care. She doesn't see me. And you were like, I need to see myself. Like it was really powerful. And I remember being like almost on the verge of tears talking to you and then just feeling, oh no, so full of love for myself. So a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with will say it's hard for me to get out there because I had this childhood trauma. And I don't want to say they hide behind their trauma, but their trauma sometimes is like a really convenient, oh, it's hard for me. And so it keeps them on the side. I call it like a sideline, or like that belief keeps them on a sideline. So what is your take on that? When someone is really, they want to get out there, they want to share their voice, they want to share their thing, but they're just like afraid because of that, because it's a trigger, because of course it is.
Yeah, it really is such a different world once you're living in symmetry, which is what I call this practice of both. We haven't even talked about the self-forgiveness,
No, that's
self-solidarity
next.
side
Like
of it
that. Yeah.
yet. But just from the perspective of that wound that you're talking about, and people use words like procrastination. I was like, I remember my first self-help book was Susan Jeffers' Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I loved so much about it, but a lot of it was just affirming over things that in some ways what we get to do is really clear it up. So it's like in the womb, or when you're little, you come out and you're just into life. And if you need something, you just cry and you're not worried about whether or not you're hurting somebody else's feelings. And then you're right back to you're learning, you're growing. And then something happens where you're not getting a need met and you go, something's wrong with me. I need to do this. I need to be that.
Right.
And then the way mind learns to deal with that is the shame, blame polarity. So it's your fault. It's my fault. It's your fault. And they are literally the flip side of the same coin. So as we do this work, we come back to the middle. So in what you were talking about, they might blame themselves for not being able to get out there, or they might blame something else like their childhood trauma. But ultimately, it's more like feel the fear and take care of it instead of feel the fear and do it anyway. You really get to neutralize the belief. It's kind of I do sign language. It would be this complete letting go.
And this is letting go in sign language?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that. I love that.
And so just, people who are my private clients or who come in, I have a year-long mastermind group. We're on our 9th year-long group.
Amazing.
We're coming into our 19th retreat now, and so many returners for all of those, because they know when they come in triggered that we are going to be able to go all the way into the scary parts of it. I'll go there with them, and we are going to come back, and you will usually be laughing, or at least feeling a lot of warmth toward whatever you or the other was doing, connected to the very person that you hated 10 minutes ago, and knowing exactly what is your path out of it. So, I would say that for those, we could really get those fears or triggers about putting themselves out there. And even in one session, let it go. And it's not like then you're affirming over and I'm doing this and I'm saying it to myself. It's no, people will say, wow, I just show up differently. My husband yelled at me and I didn't defend. And defensiveness is a big gold mine. We use that a lot. Anytime you feel a need to defend, that's really shining a light on a part of you that feels
that's so tender. I always think like the bigger the protector, like that, like the bigger the defensiveness, or the bigger that, I call that a protector, like the more tender the thing you're protecting too. That is, so I do want to talk about the wheel of self-forgiveness, because you have this whole concept called regret hell, which I think is also just, especially someone who's been like on a spiritual journey, like I started my business because I was a completely burnt out executive and I got fired from my job. And thankfully the company that fired me hired me as a full-time consultant. So and paid me what I was making. Like, it was really an incredible thing. And people were like, how could someone fire you and then hire you as a consultant? That makes no sense. And I was like, because I was great at the work and I was not great at the relationships back then. And so and there are times, oh my God, talk about 3 a.m. insomnia, where I just have a thought where I know I was bad to people. Like, I know I am a words person. I would use my words to wound. And I have regret because I know that I have been hurtful to people. I've made some people completely question I'm sure I was probably just so psychologically troubling for them. And so I know what that feels like to live in that regret. And then it took me, there's still times I'll come up and I'll be like, oh, Heather. And I know who that Heather was. I know it was a different version of myself, but I'm so interested in learning more about the wheel of self-forgiveness, because you have that constant inner critic. What makes that wheel how do you talk to a little bit about regret hell, and then how the wheel of self-forgiveness is so transformative, and what changes when people use it?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
For me, it really is my gift to the world, because it was my gift to myself. I honestly, all my years of inner work, psychological study, counseling, spiritual seeking. No one could teach me how to stop beating myself up. I was really merciless that just after any conversation or leaving a meeting, or when some of the things that trigger regret is, oh, it didn't go the way you thought it was going to go, or you turned this way and then there's traffic. I literally grew up in a household where we believed in the concept of should have. We should have done that. And so you realize should have is nothing. It's zero. It's air. It became a dirty word for my daughter, but no one could teach me how to let it go. So the biggest concept, though, is going back. The wheel of self-forgiveness has changed my life and the life of so many who didn't know how, didn't even deserve, they believed, or they didn't believe they deserved forgiveness. To start with. And then they start to see how innocent it was. You go back and be with that person that you were in that moment when you made that turn or you said that thing. And you always find what I call the spark of self-love. There's a book coming out called About the Wheel of Self-Forgiveness and another book called The Spark of Self-Love, where you always find an innocent and well-meaning motive. And even if that motive is to take care of yourself or save yourself, who else's job is that? If you believe something bad is happening to you, even if it's from your childhood wiring, then your motives were loving in firing back at that person. And from the lens you were looking through, you believed you needed to do exactly what you did. So instead of, I shouldn't have done that, you turn it around. I should have done it because I did.
And
it happened the way it happened for a reason.
For a reason. Like you made, this is because you can look back on any decision you make and sit there and just have recrimination after recrimination. But what I always remind people, like when they're in that mode, is at that time, that was literally the best decision. And I know you're a smart, like self-aware human being. So just allow yourself to know that you were making the best decision. You have a different perspective now. So now you know to do it differently.
And what's really important about that is this concept of not creating our thoughts, because people will say, I chose to feel that way, or I chose, and I'm like, no. I first, at some point, someone on the spiritual journey said, oh yeah, your thoughts are like a buffet, just choose different ones. I'm like, no, the thoughts, when you really get down to it, the thoughts just come in. They come together, the stimulus in the environment with your inner programming and the way the neural networks are wired. So given what you were believing, that's where the forgiveness lies. Given what I was believing, I was doing the best I could. Because people will say, I was doing the best I could, but I created the thought that made me do it. And I'm like, no, actually, you didn't create the thought. It just showed up.
It's there. You reacted to it. You took that thought and you did this and this with it. But the thought's going to come up. When you think about when, I don't want to say like when kids believe they're Santa Claus, I'll have to put like warning on this, but if that you are just like, oh my gosh, like this was something that was so central to your life. And then you learn like, no, it's not really that way. And then you're fine with it. You know what I mean? Like,
and it can be, sorry.
That's like you have this belief.
Whether it's the other person and you're so angry at them, and then because you've learned to find your own innocence, you can also find their innocence. And you say, wow, the worst that's ever happening is we're just believing our thinking. If I was believing what that person is believing about me right now, I'd be screaming at me too. So you're like, okay, it's not personal. They're over there believing that. And at the same time, you use it. This is what's really different about this too, is that you say, wow, how is what they're saying when I'm able to see that it's not personal and yet they have a message for me without defensiveness? How can I find that they're right, that I use their experience to see, oh, I am doing that thing. And it just knocks an argument out of the water. We go, oh yeah, you're right. I did do that. Thank you so much for letting me know.
There's nothing more disarming than when someone's ready for a fight and you're like, no, I agree with you. Like I'm on your side.
And no matter how far you've come, if you're able to find your own innocence, and that's why the wheel of self-forgiveness doesn't mean you're just going to say, fine, I'll do whatever I want and I know I can forgive myself. No, first of all, you want to act in more and more integrity, but you're also primed to do one of my little booklets called Happiness Hacks. There is the Wheel of Self-Forgiveness was the first one. One of them is called the Forgiveness Flip. One of them, that's about forgiving others. One of them is called the All-Out Amends Ladder, because when you have seen your own innocence, then you really can make a true amends. You don't need to go and beg them to forgive you. You're not tangled with them in any way. You're like, oh, I can see how I did what I was doing and what I was believing in the moment, and I'm working really hard to make a change in that. And I can see that I have created harm, or I may have. And I'm here to find out, is there a way I can make that right? And you are actually ready to hear their experience of you, which could be harsh. And you also know when to not stand in the face of abuse. That doesn't mean just because you can hear a lot more. I mean, that's what's amazing about relationships. You can actually hear what people are saying, even if they're yelling. You're like, oh yeah, I can really see how you would feel that way. And it just...
Oh
so
my
that's
gosh.
just step
I
one.
just think you seriously, like, you just, this conversation is so helpful for me with something like I've been thinking about, like very much. And one of the things that I would like just to chat just a second more about forgiveness, because I think sometimes people are like, I don't want to, like sometimes people cause like real harm to you, right? So it's, talk to me about forgiveness, because it's self-forgiveness. It's like forgiving. Talk to me a little bit more if you're in that situation, because that's one of the first things like that people will say, oh, okay, you have to forgive that person. You're like, they did this and this and this and this and this. And I'm just like, okay.
I mean, it really is. And I don't think you have to forgive them, but the cost of what's the lack of forgiveness doing to you. And if you get your grievances against them on paper, you will always be able to find how you are at least as much an offender in those exact specific areas, in the ways that you treat yourself or the ways you treat others, but you've been blind to it. And that's where, coming back to that thing where you said, you spot it, you got it, whatever is triggering you and others. And it is true. It might not even be in your relationship with them that you're doing that. But you can really open to that and just get your most honest judgments of them. So we do. I'm upset with blank because I want them to, they should, I need them to, they are, and I don't ever want to experience blank around this again. So we're really just like a brain dump, because, and people would say, why do I want to bring up all that negativity? But if you can bring it up, it means it was in there. If you're totally not attached or healed from that situation, you won't even be able to make this thing. But if you brought it, then we need to bring those little ones up and hear them. It's like you listening to those suffering parts of you.
Yes, it's like having little tiny pieces of glass. Like it reminds me of a broken windshield, which looks like it can just crack, like these tiny little squares. Like you could just pick it up and they won't cut you. But they will totally cut you because they're very sharp. And so I think it's a really beautiful thing. And the one thing that I've learned just from my own journey and the work I've done is, once you release, like there were times like I could think through things like that happened when I was a kid, and I could almost get as emotional as I did. Like I could conjure up tears and that feeling. And then once you really do let go of it, and I know exactly what you mean, it's like, if I try to go back there, it's gone. It's like, it served its purpose. It's like, it's truly no longer accessible to me anymore. And I realized like how much I was carrying something around from like when I was age 10 to age 59, like for almost 50 years.
Once you've really seen through the thought, your mind can't believe it anymore and therefore can't trigger. So what's happening with the thinking is it's triggering a cascade of emotional chemicals. So we feel it in our body. And a lot of people then follow their thread of PTSD or any kind of trauma work. And I did decades of body work, energy work with the best people I could find. And yet it didn't clear up the physiological symptoms until I learned what to do with the thinking. And one of those craniosacral therapists was working on my daughter and even saying, I put her back together every week. And the thinking keeps bringing back the
Right.
clenching that was there since she was adopted from China. So it was
Yeah.
only later when she was able to work through the thoughts that those knots in her neck
Yes.
released. So people will say, what about pre-language trauma? Or what about the traumas held in your body? What is triggering us now? We can use that as this thread to take us back to the moment when the trauma happened and got held in our bodies.
Yes.
So by releasing the thinking now, or even going back and working the moment you remember, you really, I mean, after so many years of physical pain, chronic illness and fatigue and autoimmune disorders, I am so healthy now.
Yes.
Bottomless,
You can tell you're radiant.
energetic. And it's just amazing. You didn't even know. I didn't know how much the anxiety and the reactivity was draining from my body. And so, but when you said the forgiveness part, by the way, the wheel of self, we won't really go into it, but the first part is the find your own innocence by going back and finding what you were thinking and believing. And this is a game changer. I mean, for me to be able to find my own innocence instead of waiting for others to let me know that I was okay before I could move on.
Right.
For that outcome, that perfect outcome that I had in mind. And it went that way instead. And I'm beating myself up. But then the second part is, okay, you've forgiven yourself, but you still fear that you've created a bad situation.
Right.
We get those fears on paper. And the first part of it is to say, can I absolutely know that fear is true? And so, no, you can't. You don't have a crystal ball. But the other part is, okay, the mind's going to go to worst case. It's going to say, yeah, but it
totally.
could.
Yes.
So part of our freedom is to go to worst case outcome. And lots of times I'll boil down, what would be the worst about that? What would be the worst about that? And finally you get the worst about that is that I'm laying homeless in the gutter and I have only myself to blame. So that self-blame is still, like you said, coming back to your question about forgiving.
Right.
Beating ourselves up only brings more hatred into the world. It doesn't solve that problem. And part of the wiring that causes us to beat ourselves up is a belief that we'll be making ourselves better. If I really get hard on myself and I see all the things I did wrong, then I'll improve. But in truth, it actually disempowers us and disconnects us from the actual unfolding of our situation, because we say, no, I should have gone this way. And we keep seeing life in the rearview mirror instead of living with it exactly as it did unfold, living with ourselves exactly as we did unfold. And to get there, you have to almost ask the question, okay, if that does happen, or maybe it already has happened, can we absolutely know it's a bad thing? The number of times something horrible happened and it led to something really good. Or we learn from this work that our monkey minds don't have a clue what's being accomplished in the grand scheme of things in anyone's life or path. So maybe that, quote, bad thing happening because you did or said what you did is exactly what needs to happen in this moment.
Exactly.
All we know is that our purpose and what's showing up is all we have. And this work brings us back to that. And the rest is just our mind going, what I call is the one thought behind all emotional pain, which is, this should be different than it is. I need this to be blank in order to be safe, happy, free. And it's, no, this should be exactly the way it is. That's all we have in this moment.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. I am positive there are people listening who are like, how can I connect with Shawn? How can I learn more? How can I get the wheel of forgiveness? Like, where do they go? What do they do? Shawn, how can people connect with you and your amazing work?
If you have my name, we're between websites, but so the one of the website is Living-in-Symmetry, one's ShawnMahshie.com. But if you want to do ShawnMahshie.com, but we would also be happy to send out what I call one of my happiness hack flip books.
I would love that. Yes.
Escape the prison of your thinking, which tells you the one thought behind all emotional pain and its 4 toxic traps. And it's just little diagrams of the 4 types of thinking where anytime you engage in them, you're going to be suffering. And there are quick ways to get out of them. So you can go really deeply, but you can also catch yourself in the moment and going, oh, wait, future always means fear. past always means powerlessness.
Oh my
Now,
God, that is real. Yeah, right now is what I have. Like,
yeah,
oh
and
my gosh.
now if you resist
Yeah.
now, it means no. So F for future fear, past for powerlessness, and now means no if you're resisting it. And but to be not hard on yourself, to catch yourself going, oh,
Right.
okay, of course I was wired to believe that. So many people in our society, we have
Yes.
the when this happens, you feel blank. It's really? Are you sure?
Right.
Or you were just almost taught that.
Yes.
So I have a book coming out soon. The working title is Forgive Yourself. And
Love.
the next one, The Spark of Self-Love, and ultimately a really big, almost textbook called The Self-Solidarity Solution. Because for
Amazing.
me, living in this state of self-advocacy that I call self-solidarity, always finally, after so many years being the one that knows how to find my own innocence, and instead of handing the baby off
Yes.
to others, and I get
Right.
that
Like a
baby
foster
inside.
family. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
right. We're not
That's a
waiting for
beautiful
them.
analogy. Oh my gosh. Shawn Mahshie, thank you so much, first of all, for this beautiful work. And while like I know like those curveballs, really, this is just the best example of just taking a curveball and saying, okay, I'm doing something with this because this is again happening for me. So
It's 100% reliable. If you
yeah.
work it, it works. And I do want to say, finally-happy.com. If you,
And we'll put all those links in the show notes too, just for an easy
right,
click
yep,
away.
we'll
But
get that set up.
Shawn, thank
But
you so much. It has been gorgeous talking to you today.
thank you, Heather. It was wonderful. You too. All your insights and excitement about this work. It really
Oh,
does
thank you.
work. It'll change your life.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.